All right, so the very first sound, circa 83. This sound is what you would hear. I think it was preset number 6 on the original DX7, and this is, that's the sound that everybody heard. This sound was on 60% of all hit songs by the year 1986. But by itself, I mean, I put this sound first because, number one, it's iconic. It's also a great demonstration of how a DX7 by itself really is not anything to write home about. It's mono. I mean, it's very expressive. That's the great thing about the DX7 series is, you know, people talk about how, oh, well, you know, like the Roland Jupiter X, for example, is, well, that's just a VST in a box. Well, so is a DX7. You know, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, these sounds are generated mathematically. They're not using samples, so that's why it can be so expressive. But anyway, sonically, you know, it was very limited. It was mono, it had no built-in effects, so you would run it through the effects of the time, which would be typically, you know, good reverb. So let's turn on some reverb, and you can do that on the iPad or right here on screen by just turning on the reverb send. Okay, so let's add a little bit more. So that's a very iconic 80s sound. So let's turn that off though and just hear each thing individually. Here's the dream verb. And you gotta turn up the send. Now we're getting into Daniel Lanois territory. He kind of really made the DX7 famous for sound design. He would run it through, let's go extreme. He would run it through these endless reverbs. So all of a sudden it's becoming interesting, even though it's still mono. Let's turn on the ping pong delay here. That's something you would hear on like the Rosanna solo from Toto. It was run through, or Pamela, it was run through a stereo delay, which gives you a lot of spatial stuff to work with. But here's the thing, like I'm going to show you in the TouchOSC section. You would run a DX7 through, typically in the 80s, a Roland Dimension D, which was a stereo chorus circuit. So down here in the chorus area, you've got the mix control. Now all of a sudden, now you've got a stereo DX7. Let's take the rate control. So it's basically an LFO, which is, it stands for low frequency oscillator. It's modulating the sound. That's a little bit too much. But now we're approaching what you would get when you would layer 8 DX7s at a time, which was a TX816 rack, which is what is on screen here. This is a visual representation of what a TX816 looked like. But a TX did not have any of these controls on it. All it had were the slot number here, the program number, and one button here, and then there were a couple other buttons, but you couldn't edit a TX from the front panel. So with DX Dreams, you can. So now you've got chorus built into all 8 channels, and all you gotta do is turn it on. Take that slider. So anyway, we're starting back at circa 83. Back to square one. That's what, you know, a DX7 sounded like. And when I sampled this particular sound, I didn't do anything to it. I think I had run it through, you know, a Neve 1073 style preamp. So technically it might sound a little bit bigger than a DX7, this particular sound, because of what the preamp does, but this is as basic as it gets. So moving on, you go from there to this monstrosity called Chewy We're Home. Now, I've got my expression pedal mapped to a keyboard off screen that you can't see that's bringing in some of these layers. With everything down, let's solo a couple things here. Let's see. So that's our David Foster electric piano. There's the piano. That's the Steinway from MainStage. That's one mono layer pan to the left. Here's the other one pan to the right. So now all four of those together. Now we're into firmly 80s territory. So let's bring in the pedal with those other layers. That's the outro from a song called Cross of Gold that Michael W. Smith had on one of his records, which was a blast to play. And this is kind of an approximation of all that stuff playing together. Anyway, that's the idea. So these first two sounds, the idea was to go from to so, fun stuff. All right, so moving on, I'm just going to take you through each patch real briefly and let you hear what's going on. So, Danger Zone. Top Gun, that's what that sound is. This sound was used by tons of artists. Kenny Loggins, obviously Danger Zone. This bass sound, Michael Jackson used this a lot. I mean, that's Smooth Criminal, Bad. Tons of his songs. So that sound is iconic. You've heard that many, many times. Some of the custom stuff, DX meets Moog. People don't think of DX7s as being very analog-like because they're not. But, you know, once you get into this stuff, let's bring the chorus up. You can actually do some cool stuff, especially when you layer things. So, moving on, Howard Jones. Land of Confusion. Very, another iconic sound. Again, some of these sounds by themselves, not all that interesting until you start layering them, which we'll get into later. Here's one. Totally a creative sound design kind of thing. Mod wheel EDM by itself, not all that impressive. But you take your mod wheel, and you get into like Skrillex territory. So that's that. Another DX electric bass sound. Well, not an electric bass, but more of a almost like a funk synth bass. Again, layered with other things, that can be really cool. This almost is very much like a fretless bass, this sound called So Low. What am I thinking of? Take My Breath Away by Berlin from the Top Gun soundtrack. That is very much a foundation of that sound. Synclav bass, nothing in particular about this one as far as being an iconic sound, but it was one that you would hear a lot just thumbing through presets in DX keyboard. Got cool potential for layering. This is a variation on, I believe it's this one. This one's really meant for like sub layers. If you've got the sound system that can reproduce it, it's a cool almost sine wave foundational bass, which again, very cool for layers. All right, moving on, bells. Again, not all that, nothing particularly awesome about that, but that sound was used a lot in 80s TV shows. Same with this one. Start doing some spacey stuff when you turn that dream verb on. Now, here's something you'll notice. When I click on a different sound and then come back to that one, you'll notice that everything I just did is reset. You can change that in MainStage preferences. If you go to, let's see, preferences, right here on patch change, parameter values, it's set to reset to save value. If I set it to keep current value, watch what happens. So I set this stuff that way, go to a different sound, come back to it, everything is the way I left it. But there are times you might not want that. You might want it to recall the sound as it was saved. So that's your choice. You go to preferences and parameter value and reset to save. That's my personal preference, but you may have a good reason to not do that. So now it's back to the way I had it. Additive bell. At the risk of repeating myself again, some of these are, I put these sounds in here because they are iconic sounds insofar as anybody that had a DX7 is going to recognize most of these things. It's up to you to kind of figure out what you want to do with them in 2021. But again, the real creativity with a library like this is in layering these things and coming up with your own new sounds. So that's why these are in here. And it's going to get more interesting when we get to some of the other sounds, like the iconic stuff. I remember hearing this sound a lot on the the Stranger Things score. Used this a lot. Very, very much an 80s bell sound. Here's one that's a good example of how dynamic a DX can be. At lower velocities, whole different tone. So yeah, always experiment with this stuff, see what it does. Now here is an example of a sound. You'll notice this sound is very wide, very stereo, all by itself. Let me turn all the effects off. This sound was actually sampled through the AMX16 reverb, which is so that ambience is built into the sound itself. Some of the sounds I did that way, some of them I left dry so that you would have the option to do it on your own with the effects. So that's an example of one that was captured through the hardware of the 80s. And this sound here, this TX816 ambi bells, that's actually 8 DX7 modules all playing at the same time, all slightly detuned from each other and panned apart. So when you're playing one note, you're actually hearing the sound of 8 DX7s at one time. That sound would have been impossible to get with just one DX7. So that's where DX Dreams really starts getting interesting, is a sound that was made from multiple DX engines, all under the control of one patch. Okay, and that reminds me, let me show you something else. These two buttons up here, you've got a choice of your main reverb sound between Hall, which is what it defaults to. If I turn that off, now there's no reverb on it. That's just the sound of the sound itself. But if you want more of the shorter, non-linear reverb that came from that AMS reverb, turn that on. It's a shorter reverb. It's non-linear, so the sound of the reverb stays level and just drops off suddenly. Let me show you on a different patch what that would sound like. Turn on the reverb. Let's go back to the Hall. Turn off the Hall, turn on the AMS. So very, very different reverb. Toto used this a lot. The guys that mixed their stuff used a lot of the AMS. In fact, a lot of artists did. It gave you, gosh, you hear this sound all through the 80s. So those are your choices there, and that affects the entire concert, but I'm going to show you later how to actually get into each channel strip and put reverb just on each individual element if you want. So again, these two buttons are your choice between the overall reverb that these knobs send to. Does that make sense? So for example, again, let's go to a different sound. That's our Hall. That's our AMS. And they affect sounds differently. You know, some sounds are going to sound differently and react to it differently. So it's good to experiment. If you're doing more of a ballad, you know, setting or worship setting, Hall is probably the right choice, especially on one of the electric pianos. Let me go down to one of the other ones here. You know, you're probably going to want a Hall for that. But if you're doing more of an up-tempo pop thing, I kind of like the AMS for stuff like that. It's ambient, but not. It doesn't get muddy like a regular reverb would. So that's what that is. So let's go back here. I think we hit all the bell sounds. Just gave you a handful. The money. This is why everybody had a DX7. The electric piano sounds, and I'm actually going to start with, well, no, I played you the basic one. I played you circa 83. That's where it all started. That's just a basic dry DX7. So the more interesting ones, this one's not one that you heard a lot, but it was definitely used as a layer on certain things. Just kind of skip through here. There's an icon. It's a little bit more mellow. But this sound, Dreaming of the 80s, was taken from the TX816. So it's 8 different electric piano sounds layered together, all panned apart and slightly detuned. But this one, Dreaming of the 80s, actually has a little bit of the Roland MKS20 electric piano layered in with it. And that gives it a little bit of a different flavor. But it was a sound that you heard all the time. It was the DX electric pianos with the MKS20. So that's that one. A little bit more of the pure stuff. This one is taken from my DX5, which was custom restored by Synth Spa, my friend Alan. who did a remarkable job. So this DX5 is the only one like it in the world. It's got upgraded DA converters, so it's a little bit cleaner and quieter than a stock DX5. But the Rolls Royce of the DX line was the DX1, which was it was a 200-pound, almost a prototype of the DX line. There were only 140 of them made, and it was made without any thought for cost. It was purely done to show off what the DX could do. And it came out in 1984, so a bit after the DX7. When Yamaha saw, I think I'm getting my facts right here, when Yamaha saw how big it was taking off, they created the DX1, and very few artists had them, because again, there was only 140 of them made. But the DX5 was the exact same thing in a more commercially viable case. It instead of having wooden keys like the DX1, it had synthesizer keys. It was smaller, for sure. It only weighs about 60 pounds instead of 200. And it's in a body that's bigger than a DX7 for sure, but it's got the circuitry of the DX1. So the difference is it was essentially two DX7s in one chassis. So you could take a mono DX7 sound and you could have two of them layered together and panned apart for these really nice, rich stereo sounds. It's super dynamic. This is one where I sampled a bunch of different velocity layers, so you're getting the full. If you were to sit down at the DX5 and then play this, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It is incredibly dynamic. Get a little bit of that FM synthesis buzz in there, which was a very, very much a part of that sound. Love that sound. That's one of the kind of the upper tier of pop artists would use that sound. You would hear it in R&B a lot. You would hear it in occasionally some Michael Jackson stuff. It was a little bit less common than the circa 83 patch, but. And this is a variation of that, also from the DX5. It's warmer and doesn't have quite the attack. So, let's see. Now this one is from the DX7, but if we turn the chorus off, so this is the raw sound as you would hear it out of a DX7. Let's turn that chorus back on. Instant 80s. All right, so the big one. Foster's Dream. This was the fully loaded TX816, several of those different electric pianos. It was basically 4 stereo pairs. You would have this the FM Rhodes patch, which was this one. You'd have that assigned to 2 modules, panned apart and detuned. Then you would have the regular super basic one to another 2 modules. And then this patch from the DX5 for the real crystalline kind of bell sound. So you would have sorry, what am I trying to say? You'd have 4 pairs, each panned apart and slightly detuned. That would result in this. And of course, everybody used that. David Foster used it on a bunch of his stuff. Again, 80s overload. And then this guy, this is called Mellow and Moody. I don't even know if you call this an electric piano, but it kind of, it's an interesting sound. I've always liked this for certain things. I turned on the Dream Verb for this because it's, I don't know, you might find a use for it. This was an altered version of the original DX7 electric piano, this on the cheesy side, which is why I called it that, with a slight change to the algorithm. I'm not a fan of this sound, but a lot of people are, so it's in there. Now, DX multi-layered EP. This is, again, another TX patch where you had 4 stereo pairs all doing slightly different things. Now this one I like, this TX multi-layered EP. This almost sounds like there's a little bit of real piano in there, but there's not. This is all DX. Sparkle keys. Again, it's a little bit more sound design oriented if you turn up the Dream Verb. Cool potential. The DX7 impersonating a Wurlitzer. Okay, so let's move on to some of this fun stuff. Miscellaneous other category. These sounds are a little bit more experimental. This is the kind of stuff you can do if you get a little crazy. This first one, any of these that you see with ARP in the name stands for arpeggiator. It should be obvious what this does as soon as you press a key. It's got a pattern to it. So, the mod wheel is going to have an effect on these as well, and their velocity is sensitive. So between velocity, of course that one's making a liar out of me. I forget which patches have what assigned. I've been working so hard on this stuff. Let me go down to this one, interactive kalimba. Let me turn the arpeggiator off for a second. With the mod wheel up, very sensitive to velocity. Pull the mod wheel back down. So you've got a ton of dynamic range just by playing with velocity and the mod wheel. Then you turn the arpeggiator on. So, very cool stuff. Let me go back up in order here. Brushed glasses. Cool. Comping clav-like. High-res clavier. I just showed you this one, the interactive kalimba. Moving on, minor prophet mod wheel. This one almost sounds like an analog synth. Now let me add some chorus. Love that one. Mr. Miyagi's Garden. We just watched Karate Kid not long ago with our daughter, and so it reminded me of this sound. I think that was Mr. Miyagi's theme. Not quite a Fairlight. Oh, I know what this reminds me of. This is almost identical to the sound that Tears for Fears used in Shout. I shouldn't say it's almost identical, but it has some of that Fairlight quality to it. The breath, the human voice sample that was used in there sounds like it's buried into this sound. Anyway, that's that. Pat Leonard's Mod Wheel Arp. Another one that sounds analog. Again, the idea with those is to show you that a DX7 doesn't have to sound like a DX7. It can do some really cool modern stuff. And that's just one simple sound. If I turn the arpeggiator off, actually I'm gonna get rid of all the effects so you can hear it all by its lonesome. Oh, it's got chorus on it as well. So that's the sound design aspect to this. So, you start using your imagination a little bit. Well, what'd that sound like if I put some chorus on it? Man, that's starting to sound remarkably like a Juno almost. And man, DX7s had a huge bottom end because they're based on sine waves. Man, if you got subwoofers, that sound will blow your feet, blow your pant legs. Turn the effects back on. Turn the arpeggiator on. So, anyway, that's the idea. Percolator. Very much a DX type sound, that kind of attack. Pursuit of a Dream. This sound was used by my boss, Michael W. Smith, a lot in his mid-'80s era live. When you would run this through chorus, in the right context, like with like some piano under it. It sounded huge in a live setting. Another one that's very attack oriented. And this one, if I'm not mistaken, if I turn the effects off, yeah, it's another one that was sampled through the AMS reverb, so it has that ambience to it, even though there's no effects turned on. You're hearing the actual AMS reverb baked into the samples. All right, moving on. Synth Brass. This is the kind of stuff that I've always loved the DX7 for. These big, brassy sounds, especially when you start layering them. I'm gonna start going faster so I don't kill so much time here. That's one of the cheesier sounds of the 80s, but it is what it is. Okay, now these two, DX meets Profit Brass. These are layers of the TX816 with some Profit 5 layered in for extra texture. That's very, very much what that sound is. Dual CS80. These next four are from the DX5. It was some typical sounds that were split, panned apart. Very much like a CS80, Yamaha's flagship synth, late 70s, using Blade Runner. Believe it or not, most people would not recognize this sound by itself, but it was used a lot as a layer in a lot of big 80s synth sounds. This one, iconic trumpets. Super cheesy by itself, but again, it was used a ton in the 80s. Let's add some stereo chorus to that. Prince used that a lot. Fahrenheit. This sound, if you remember the Toto song, Fahrenheit, that was the sound in the intro. Big, fat, almost analog brass. Makes a great layer. Obi on a diet. A little bit of an Oberheim kind of thing, but as interpreted by a DX. Porcaro, circa 83, Steve Porcaro. Cool lead sound. Prince's Hot Chicken. No idea why I called it that. Just sounds like it would be something that Prince would use. It gets a little bit into that 1999 kind of vibe. Seriously not analog, although it sounds dangerously analog almost. Okay, the next one. This is an iconic sound. Toto's African GS1. The GS1 was a predecessor to the DX series, and it was the actual sound that made this song famous. That's the sound all by itself. Now, I resampled it with some of the Prophet 5 layered in for some extra texture. Kind of more of an idealized version. Now, if you layer that with a piano, you would get the whole thing, which you'll hear later. That makes an incredible layer underneath a nice bright rock piano for gosh, all kinds of things. Toto's cello brass. Hydra brass. Yeah, very, very iconic DX flavored sounds. Now, these next three, TX 3-layer brass 1, 2, and 3, these are, like we said before with electric pianos, 4 stereo pairs of brass samples, so they're bigger and more intricate. Now, people have asked why do this for EXS24 or the sampler as Logic calls it now, and not for Kontakt or other formats? It's because, first and foremost, this is meant to be geared for live performance. But the main reason is these sounds, I have not heard any other sampler format that can nail the characteristics of these sounds, especially stuff like this, the attack portion of the sound and the release. Let me go back up to one of these other ones, like Fahrenheit. It's real subtle, but when you let go of the sound, the envelope, the brightness kind of comes down on the sound a little bit and tightens up. See, I got an even better version of that. I think it's one of these. Nope. Nope. You'd think I would know these sounds. That's kind of it. There you go. You hear what happens when I let go of the keys? It's got like a. That is why that I did this for this format, because it totally captures the sound and behavior of the way a DX plays. So that is why it's meant for that. Okay, so let's get to the real reason that we're all here, the iconic sounds. These are the sounds which really, as I keep saying, defined the decade of the 80s. This is the stuff that is, it's been heard around the world for the last 30-some years. So without blabbering more, I'm just going to step through them real quick. A couple of these I aimed for complete authenticity. Others, like 1999 here, they're slightly idealized. If you listen to the original recording, it really doesn't sound that great. It was done on, Prince was not an engineer, and he captured a lot of his own stuff in those days. So it's real noisy, and it's just not a very hi-fi recording. So this one is as faithful to the original as I could get, but at the same time, it's clean and very hi-fi, but it's the sound. I'm not sure if I'm playing that. Look it up. Look it up on YouTube. Something like that. Big, fat, sassy brass. Again, this is like 8 layers on a TX816. That's that. Addicted to Love. Robert Palmer. Again, not sure I'm playing it right, but now this one again, you're hearing that, you're hearing the AMS reverb. So let's dive under the hood for this. Let's go to edit mode, which is Command 2, and if we solo this channel up, which is, that's the layer that you're hearing the AMS reverb. So let's open Space Designer. And the preset that I've got is called Backstage Pass Tambo Room 5.5. This is one of my custom reverb impulses that comes with DX Streams. And this was sampled meticulously from an AMS reverb unit. And so that is the sound of the 80s. So you can put that on any of these sounds. The way you would do that, say you wanted to, let's go back up to the very first, to the circa 83, the electric piano. What I would do is go into its channel strip, go to your reverb folder, call up Space Designer, and now your preset menu is going to look a little different than mine because I've got other presets in here. But if you hold down on that, go to Backstage Pass, BSP AMS folder, and call up that preset. And there you go. That is the AMS RMS 16. Now you've got that effect just on that channel strip here in your mixer. So let me take that off. And again, you can do that to any channel strip in any of your patches. So let's go back down where we were, I can't talk, to Addicted to Love. Go back into performance mode. That's a big, crucial component to a lot of these sounds. So, moving on. This is the one we talked about earlier. The Africa GS1 and Steinway. This is the Prophet 5, the DX Prophet patch from earlier, which was this one, the African Prophet, layered with the MainStage Factory Steinway. And again, this one is one that's slightly idealized. I used the layer that has the Prophet 5 in there for a little bit more texture. Let's solo these. Let's hear just the synth layer. Let's hear the piano. And so that's that. Now, Africa, the flute and woods. I can't remember how the solo goes. Gosh, I played it in the demo, now I can't remember it. Anyway, that's the idea. Again, you can solo stuff to hear what's contributing to that sound. That's the flute. That's that part of it. Each one does something slightly different. And again, some of these are mapped to the expression pedal. So when you're playing just the flute part, almost got it right. You can bring in the woods with the pedal. If you could play the actual solo, which I can't seem to right now. So explore these. They're interactive. You know, the expression pedal is going to do things. The mod wheel will do things sometimes. Anyway, moving on. This one's another favorite. Broken Wings by Mr. Mister down here. You've got the, sorry, you can't see my left hand on the camera, but you can see on the MainStage screen what I'm doing. This is a layer of that DX, of the Danger Zone bass with the DX meets Moog patch. If you solo these, there's one layer. There's the other layer. So that's what's making up the bass. Now, on the right hand, you got two different pad sounds. So, and then all the way up here, you got these bell layers. Dang it, can't remember these sounds. And that is exact. Those are the exact sounds that you heard on that record. So this is one of those where everything's mapped across the keyboard. Love that. Love that sound. Could he be? This one is a Michael W. song. This one is another example where one sound is actually 8 DX7 modules all layered together, slightly detuned, panned apart, so it just sounds big. It's basically a clarinet sound that's on overload. So that's that one. Another favorite. Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds. That one has the actual reverb baked into the sound as well, because it's a crucial part of that sound. So there's a little bit here on the channel strip and some delay, but if you take that off, there's still a ton of reverb on it, so you don't need a whole lot. So that's that. Manuel's GS2. Another sound from Michael W. Smith. Back in the early 80s, he and Amy Grant used sounds very similar to this. Enya's Mod Wheel ARP. This one is not, I don't know if this one should be in the iconic folder, but Enya used an arpeggiated DX7 a lot in her stuff. So that's kind of what that is. Head Over Heels, Tears for Fears. Let's see, I think this was in the key of G. Yeah, it should be up here. It's a mixture of piano and a couple other things. Home of the Brave by Toto. This is a lead sound. This is a layer of two different things. This one is kind of a tentative version of this. It's not quite as authentic as I would like it to be because I haven't sampled one layer of it yet. So that's coming in a future release, but this is very, very close. That's that. In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel. Yeah. Let's see, Love Walks In by Van Halen. Gosh, trying to remember how this one goes. This one again is a layer. There's four things going on here. You've got piano. Let's see which is which. Yeah, so there's the piano layer. You got the hard attack layer, which is technically not from a DX7, but it's in here because I wanted you to have the authentic sound. I forget actually. I think this was sampled from a Roland Jupiter 8 if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. I forget, but it's I sampled it and included it in here for you. Like a Synth Brass. So, put them all together. That's that. Another absolute favorite, David Foster, Man in Motion from St. Elmo's Fire. This one's pretty simple. This one is just this flanged DX pad, which actually should be a little bit louder. Let me turn that up a little bit. Foster's Dream, and then the piano. Also very, very Chicago. Anyway, this one's very, very much modeled after that sound in St. Elmo's Fire. That's that. MJ's Bad Bass. This sound almost like a wooden attack kind of bass. This sound was used on a lot of Michael Jackson songs. Smooth Criminal, Bad, not Man in the Mirror. Yeah, it was actually in Man in the Mirror. He used this a lot. So that's that one. Notorious, Duran Duran. Oh shoot, I forget what key this is in. Something like that. Prince, Delirious Stabs. Super cheesy sound, but it's iconic. Say Once More. This is an electric piano sound that's super moody and vibey. Again, I probably shouldn't have put this one in the iconic folder. Amy Grant had a record called Lead Me On, which was a fantastic record. And I think it's on that record. And it used this sound. Real ethereal and all that kind of stuff. Take Me Home, Phil Collins. Basically just two DX7s, panned apart, each is run through a Roland Dimension D. Killer sound. Again, also very David Foster. That's that. The Top Gun Bells. Oops, octave too low. It was the first sound you heard on the Top Gun soundtrack. Let's see. Toto, Can't Stop Loving You. Another deceptive sound it's only 2 layers in here, but it's actually a lot more than that you're hearing. This one sound, when you solo it, that's 8 patches in a real TX816. With just a little bit of this thing underneath. And then Pamela. This is one of the biggest sounds in here. Again, lots of layers here. Last one in the iconic folder, When It's Love. Anyway, again, I forget. Sorry guys, I'm being sloppy here. Lots going on in this one. You've got piano, and then these echo layers. So, sounds again that by themselves are pretty boring. They all play a part. Again, say you want, which layer was it? Was the synth. You can change anything you want. You want more of that attack sound. There we go. Okay, so there you go. That's all the iconic stuff that's in there for now. There's more coming. I'm going to do updates that will include some more iconic sounds. Somebody asked where are a few things like Power of Love that was in the demo video, and oh gosh, which one? There was another sound. Everything you need to make those sounds is in here. I didn't necessarily give you everything all laid out, but I kind of wanted to encourage you to do some digging, and as a way of learning sound design. So that one, for example, I'll jump around for just 1 second. The sound down here in the bonus folder, might as well jump. Obviously that is, that's what that is. It's an OBXD, Oberheim, but that sound was a big part of Power of Love as well. It's very, very simple. So that sound, layer it with something else, that is Power of Love. So a couple other things here, piano EP combos. I might skip a couple of these. This is just a couple things that are very much 80s staples. This is a piano layered with the big David Foster electric piano. Here's a little bit more of a tame version, Somewhere in Chicago. That's that. Then we get these piano EP pad layers. Kind of what they sound like. Toto foundations, same idea. This is when you start getting into the bigger layers. You've got a synth, piano, electric piano, and the MKS 20 layer. Very much like something Toto would have used. All right, let's see what else. Subtle differences between these. Again, man, the dynamics of this library are incredible, just like the real thing, which is really hard to capture. And in a live setting, through a great PA, these sounds are absolutely massive. Okay, last couple things in the bonus folder. These are sounds that are not from DX7s, but I wanted you to have them just as a little taste of things to come from future libraries like JX Streams, which is going to be based on Roland's analog synthesizers of the 80s, Prophetic Dreams, which is from the Prophet 5, and just a few other little things from here and there. So Faux in the Air. This is very much like the pad that Phil Collins used on In the Air Tonight from the Prophet 5. But I will be sampling the real thing, so this is just kind of an approximation. What makes this sound is you'll hear that the right side is delayed a little bit from the left side. You hear that slap back? Phil used that kind of effect a lot back then. Instant Phil Collins. All right, Sweet Dreams is from a Roland JX10. It's two different things, panned apart. Take on Me. This one is also from the 80s, or excuse me, from the JX series. It's a split. That's what that one is. I already showed you this one. Shouldn't play that too much. It's kind of a faux pas. Okay, the 3 Rosanna leads. This one, the first single version here, this one just goes all the way across the keyboard. That's that. Again, apologies for my not having these memorized the way I should for this. The 2 split versions, they put different variations of this in different parts of the keyboard. So same thing down here. And then you come up here. This is one layer of it, and then when you bring the pedal in, it brings in the other layer. So if you listen to the original solo, you've got the first part. Again, I'm butchering it, and then you got that. It's basically a scale up here, and then it brings in the. It repeats the line with that. Then the third part, at the end of the solo, is this. See if I can get it so you can see my hand. So that's the end of this solo. So split across the keyboard. I will do a version, I'll get these in my fingers, and a lot of you have asked to actually see those solos picked apart, and I will do that for you. I just wanted to kind of blaze through these sounds, and so, you know, there you go. This one, this is from a Prophet 5. I approximated it with one of Logic or MainStage's built-in synths called the ES1, but it's almost identical to this. That's that arpeggiated sound. Last one is just a simple pad from a Roland Jupiter 8. Again, approximated because I haven't sampled it yet. So there you go. Those are all the sounds, top to bottom, that come with this first version of DX Dreams. And there will be more. I'm kind of waiting to hear some of the requests that I get, but for now, I just wanted to take you through the list and show you generally what everything is. I think I've showed you everything. The patch up-down buttons, these will correspond. You can do it, of course, with your computer keyboard. You can also do it with the iPad, which I don't have on the camera at the moment, but I showed you earlier. You can use the patch up-down buttons in there to step up and down, or you can assign these. You can just click on them on screen. You can assign these to any hardware controller that you might have, you know, scroll through your patches that way. Okay, so let's talk about TouchOSC running on the iPad here. You'll notice that everything on the iPad mirrors everything that's on the screen. You've got 8 channel strips, which correspond to the 8 channel strips in the virtual TX rack on screen. So I've called up, let's start with a very, very first basic patch called Circa 83, and this is in just the regular DX Dreams concert, not the one that comes with Backstage Pass, but just straight up DX Dreams. So this sound, it's kind of the, you know, the Doogie Howser sound from the 80s. This was the electric piano sound in the DX7 that started everything in the 80s. You'll notice it's mono. The sound is not stereo. There's nothing really interesting about this sound. So let me just show you what happens if I change the chorus parameters here on screen. If I click on the chorus mix control down here in the channel strip, you'll see over in the on the iPad, you'll see it changing there. So correspondingly, if you do the same thing on the iPad, I have to look at it and see what I'm doing here. You'll see it changing on screen. So now let's listen to it. There's the basic sound. Let's increase the chorus mix. Went from mono to nice wide chorus. Now the modulation of it is a little much. So let's take the rate control and see what happens there. You'll hear it's changing the frequency of the modulation. So for an electric piano, probably want it to be pretty slow. And then the third control is the depth control. This is how much, or intensity as MainStage calls it. You can actually do some kind of cool matrixy sound design stuff with that. But obviously that's too much. So, back to the beginning. Turn off the chorus by pulling the fader all the way down. You get just a mono sound, but increase it a little bit. And now you've got the equivalent of the old Roland Dimension D chorus from the 80s, which is what made a DX7 all of a sudden go from mono to stereo. Yeah, and I can't play today. Let's try it on a different sound. Let's go to Danger Zone. Start with it off. That's the old DX7 bass sound, which was used all over the 80s. So let's put some chorus on that. There again, you hear how it goes from mono to stereo. Whoops, I'm not looking at what I'm doing here on the iPad. And then the rate. Now you got a nice subtle stereo effect on it. Turn it all the way up. And it almost sounds like double tracked. You've got one on each side of the spectrum. So that was an effect that we used a lot in the 80s to take a single mono DX7 and make it sound stereo. Nice and thick. So everything else on the iPad mirrors what's on screen. So say I just want to put some verb on that, the main verb, just turn it on. And then of course turn it off. And the nice thing is you're not muting the reverb. You're muting the send to the reverb, so it's graceful. Let's turn on the dream verb. Of course, that is a nice long decay on it. Turn that off. Turn on the delay. And of course, that's dependent on your tempo. Which you can control, with the tempo knob over here. So those are the effect sends. You can also mute this channel or solo this channel, which I'll show you that in a second. And then you get your semi-tune and fine-tune controls. So that comes in handy. Now the problem is, with the iPad, it's really hard, especially with these knobs being as small as they are. Say you want to reset it. Well, it's hard to do on the iPad. So what you can do is you go over into the on-screen controls, and if you click or hold Option and click on the control, it'll go to its initial setting. If you hold Command and click on it, it'll go to its neutral setting. In this case, no fine-tuning whatsoever. So that comes in handy. But that was something that you would do on a TX816. You would take up to 8 sounds, one from each module, and you would slightly detune them from each other. Now, there's nothing loaded in this particular slot here, so that's going to act a little funny. So let's put that back. That's almost like a pitch bend. So again, say you want to get right back to where you were, hold Command and click on that control. There you go. And then, of course, you got your volume for just that slot. And that's basically the idea with TouchOSC. You've got 8 channels. And then as far as the controller goes, there's all your stuff for backstage pass, page 1, page 3, and DX Streams is in the middle. So that's the iPad control. So let's jump back into a couple other things here and pick up where we were. Now I just want to show you a couple of things as far as getting around MainStage itself. First things first, you'll notice that the patches, if you read the manual, which you should, every patch starts, except for these bonus ones down here, every patch starts with DDX or DXD and then a number, 1, 2, 4, or 8. That number means that it stands for how many modules you are using, or how many modules that sound uses. So for example, one of the biggest ones, like up here at the top, Chewy, We're Home, it's a DXD8 sound. So it uses all 8 modules. And you'll see when I change to a DXD1 sound, the other 7 modules, they go blank. Now there's one weird issue with MainStage, and I'm not sure what's going on. We're all looking into this on the development team. This is what it should look like. So you call up an 8 patch, all 8 modules populate, and depending on how they're set, you'll see their effects do different things. You'll also see, generally speaking, a preset name show up in the little window here in each module. So if we go back to a single, everything goes away. So while I'm thinking of it, a couple notes. There are some gosh darn it, I can't talk tonight, DXD8 patches like this one. It says it's a DXD8 patch, but you're only seeing 3 patches active. That's because for a lot of these, I started with a template patch. You'll notice in the template folder, there are 3 different versions. There's DXD, I think there's 3 different versions. DXD1, DXD2, 4, and 8. I think I don't have that handy. But I generally, when I'm starting from scratch with sound design, I'll start with a DXD8 patch because when I design these template patches, I mapped every one of the controls in all 8 channels. And that's 128 mappings. If you started with a DXD1 patch, that's just one layer, and you went in and added your own channel strips, you would have to map all these things yourself, which is no fun. So, but let me show you how to modify some things. So let's say we start with a sound that's similar to what we're looking for. Let's say DXD8. Let's go with one of these. So it's a DXD8 patch. And as you can see, there's only 4 layers active. So let's go under the hood. We go into edit mode. Let's solo up this one. That's the MKS. Okay, say we want to change that module out for something else. There's a couple ways to do that. You can go in here into the channel strip menu and change to a different channel strip in your library. However, if you do that, you're going to lose these mappings. This is just the way MainStage works. So I recommend not doing that. What I would do, find the module you want to swap out. Okay, module 4. Go over here, open that plugin, and I'm still using MainStage 343, I think. So it still uses the EXS24. In later versions and in Logic, this looks altogether different now. It's called Sampler now, but it's the same engine. It just has a different face now. They've improved a lot of things. In that version, you're going to go up here in the top left corner and you'll see everything over here. But in this version, you click on the title and that's going to bring up your library. So yours is going to look different. So for me, you're going to navigate to the DX Streams folder, which I believe is in Backstage Pass. It'll say Backstage Pass and then DX Streams, I think. I'm kind of on a developer's version here, so mine might be a little different, but it won't be hard to find. So find your DX Streams folder, and then, assuming you want something from DX Streams, call up a sound in here. Say I want a bell sound. So we go into bells and pull it up there. That way, all your mappings are maintained. All your effects stay the way they were. All this stuff, the meters, everything is going to still work. So that's what I would do if you want to swap out sounds. Go into the actual plugin, change the sound inside the plugin, and then everything will stay as it's supposed to be. Now, say you want to do something outside of MainStage altogether. Say you've got Omnisphere and you want to pull an Omnisphere patch in. All right, so go in here. Instead of it being EXS24 or Sampler, go into your Spectrasonics folder, pull in Omnisphere. Now, it's going to take a second. You'll see what just happened there. Now, my preset window went away, but that's okay for now. So now, blah, 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 let's pull up. So now I've got an Omnisphere patch in here. So now your volume control, I'm going to play with this on the iPad. That will still work. And your, let's see, solo and mute will still work. Your effects sends will still work. The only thing that's going to go away is this preset name window and the semi and fine tune controls. Those are going to go away because those are by default mapped to the EXS24 pitch controls. So that's how you want to change stuff out. Say I want to add something. This is a DX8 patch. There were only 4 layers active. So say I want to add something. Let me get rid of Omnisphere here though for a second. Well, actually, no, I'm going to leave it. You see down here 5, 6, and I'll have to scroll, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are your extra layers that are right now are unoccupied. So I could open up another plugin on one of these. Let's open Retro Synth. I actually really like Retro Synth. And let's pull up a preset, Backstage Pass, Rosanna lead. So now I've got, what is it, 5 or 6 things. Oh, I forgot to put something in this slot. So there you go. That's a quick and dirty tutorial on how to add sounds to an existing patch. Now, say I like this. You're going to want to go over here to the patch menu and export that. And so to do that, you hit Command E, and that's going to export. And now you can save this wherever you want. So I'm not going to actually save that, but that's what you would want to do if you've created something you like. So let's see, what else? Now, what if one of these sounds, what if oh, I know what I wanted to tell you. These patch name fields. This is a feature that I wish MainStage was a little bit further along on. Right now, you have to manually populate these names. They don't do that automatically. That's just there for organization's sake and for my own OCD. So say I have, let's change this one out. Let's call up that instrument. Let's put a brass sound in there, DX Streams. Let's see, where is it? Synth Brass, Blister Brass. All right, so now this says EP, but it's really blister brass. So what I would do, go down here, find the layer that's making that sound, it's layer 2, and just double click on the bottom of the channel strip and give it a name. I'm just gonna call it brass. Now you will see up here it says brass. So that is how that works. All right, what else? Oh, program changes. You will see that none of the patches have program changes enabled. That's because if you use Backstage Pass, or if you use a different way of sending program changes in your concert, I wanted you to be able to map them yourself. So say you put all the sounds in a certain order. Say this is your set list right here. You would want that to be patch number 1. So go down here under Attributes, click on Program Change to enable it, and set it, double click, set it to 001. So now when you send a program change message to MainStage, it's going to call up that patch. So what you want to make sure of is that no other patches are assigned to that number, or it's going to get confused. So you'll see here, it now says P1 in this column, which is way too tiny for you to read probably, but that's because I'm using a big 4K display. So say this patch number 2, I'd go down here, turn on program change, type in 002, so that's number 2, and so on. That's how you assign program changes. Last thing, how to assign stuff. There's a little MainStage tutorial. Say you create a sound that for some reason, or you swap out a channel strip. That's a better example. Say I called up a sound here in my user channel strip settings, Backstage Pass. Let's say I brought in something from Backstage Pass. Say a accent synth. Okay, so now what happened? Now these controls aren't going to respond anymore. They're not mapped to anything. That's why I don't advise calling up channel strip presets, because you're going to lose your mappings. All right, so say that's the sound you want though, so you want to map your controls. You're going to have to do it one at a time, which is a pain, but that's MainStage. Okay, so first things first, mute. You would just go down here, make sure that your inspector, if it's not visible, click on the eye for inspector. Everything is per layer. So we're in layer 2. There's a mute button, so you're going to want to go down here. Here are your different layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So you want to go into layer 2, which is called Frozen Comet in this case, and you want to click on mute. So now that mute button is going to mute that channel. So now click the solo button, same thing. Thankfully, those are still mapped, so that's already mapped. But what about the verb stuff? Okay, here is the verb on off. So we'd go into, first of all, make sure it's selected, go to channel 2, and then under the sends folder, that is your main verb mute button. And it's going to default to on. So what you want it to look like, you basically want to have this stuff be, you may have to play with this. I'm trying to remember how this is set. Yeah, okay. So muted, and then you want to have the dotted bar here and muted. That's how it's going to default. So now when you click on that, it's going to turn it on. Now you want to map the actual volume of that send. So go into channel 2 down here, back to sends, main verb level. Now that's mapped to that. And you can set a saved value for that. So now that's going to be our saved value. And say you want the mute button to be on. Go over here to saved value. There you go. And then you just continue on down the line. So those are your main verb sends. Here's your dream verb. So you go to channel 2, send, dream mute, and so on. Delay. These things here don't do anything. They're just visual to help you identify the channel. If you want the patch name field to be populated, you would go into channel 2. Under the instrument that's loaded, which is an EXS24 in this case, or sampler. and you would select preset name. And then there you go. Now the preset name is going to show up. Your meter is still assigned and your volume is still assigned. So there you go. That is how you assign all of these controls. And again, remember, if you've created a patch that you like, go over here and export it. Command E. Otherwise, it's not going to be remembered when you close this concert. So that is quick and dirty, how to get around, how to assign things. That stuff falls more under the general knowing how MainStage works, which I encourage you to do because that's how you're going to get the most out of it. This whole virtual panel up here, virtual DX7, the only thing that works up here is the patch number. That's going to show you your currently selected patch. Everything else here is just a visual right now. Doesn't do anything. This area is for future expansion. But for now, it's intended to look like a DX7 panel. So, all right. I hope this helps. And hope you are enjoying DX Streams. If you have any questions, shoot me an email from the website. And get involved in the Facebook group. And we'd love to have you. And that's it. I hope you enjoy DX Streams.